Hi, I'm retired NYPD Detective Vic Ferrari, and welcome to NYPD Through the Looking Glass podcast, where you'll get unique insight into the New York City Police Department. Before we get started, I encourage you to check out my Amazon author page, where you'll find my series of behind-the-scenes NYPD books. They're $10 paperback, $2.99 ebook download, including my latest and greatest NYPD Laughing in the Line of Duty. Today we got a special guest. He's a retired alcohol, tobacco, and firearms agent turned author. Ignacio Esteban. He's authored over 75 true crime books, including ATF Undercover and the Most Dangerous Crime Syndicates of Our Time. I'd like to welcome to our show Ignacio Esteban. Ignacio, thank you for coming on. How you doing today?
Vic, man, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. I know we did that one show a few months ago with Gary on, and shout out to Adrian Martinez on Invest in Yourself. That was a fun show. I enjoyed that.
Oh yeah, Gary Jenkins. He's got the Wiretap podcast, right? And
Wiretap.
And Invest in Yourself with Adrian. Yeah, those great guys. They got both great shows. For those of you who are listening, please check out those podcasts. Ignacio, tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into law enforcement.
Yeah, I almost called my book The Accidental Agent instead of ATF Undercover because I grew up watching Miami Vice, right? In the 80s. I'm from Miami, right? Born in LA, raised in Miami. Parents, my grandparents were Spanish, came to Cuba. My family left Cuba because of the communists in Castro and came to eventually Florida. And a great country. I was born in the United States. I love this country, gave great opportunities to succeed and prosper in this great nation of ours. So, I kind of always saw it back there. I thought it was pretty cool. Don Johnson, the Ferrari, no pun intended, right? The long hair, the flash, the money, all that stuff. Man, that's pretty cool. And I knew the locations because I lived in Miami. I said, man, this is pretty cool. And there's a lot of stuff coming in. But, I already got my bachelor's degree. I studied political science and history, right, later. I was going to go to law school up in Michigan. I was studying at FIU, which is Florida International University in Miami, to work on my master's in international relations. So I had a real passion for politics, customs, because they needed Spanish speakers who understood the culture, and I put in for it. And instead of getting in debt for law school, I got picked up, and the rest is history. And I started with customs. And that's where I kind of saw, it opened my eyes from being a guy almost going to law school to being in the front line of the war on drugs. And in the 90s, the drugs were coming through Miami. Lots of it. The cartels were pumping it in quickly. They were using airplanes, planes, any way they can get in fast. They're using transshipment countries, especially in the Caribbean, Haiti, Jamaica, any way they can get in here. Instead of going to slow boat, hey, they can get 747 with flowers, loaded with cocaine, because the corruption, would open my eyes, Vic, was enormous. Enormous, the corruption. Not only the ramp workers, not only the longshoremen, because they were involved. They were buying everybody. But unfortunately, and I know I mentioned one of these stories before, one of my supervisors was also involved in corruption, and a lot of other people. So this wakes you up. You're a guy in your early 20s, mid-20s, and all of a sudden you see a supervisor of yours who would clear a flight, let's say MIA, right? It would go to a small airport, which would, let's say, Tamiami Airport, right? He would go on the weekends to clear a private flight that was coming in, with about 300 pounds of cocaine, and use the local authorities like Hallandale Beach Police Department and Hollywood Police Department to help clear the flight and escort him with the 300 pounds back to an undisclosed warehouse. Wow. Unbeknownst to him, though, the gig was up and internal affairs was all over him. And all that was wired. But to see him get arrested later, right, especially a supervisor, that had an impression. And then he cooperated, took down some other people who you will work with. And you're thinking, man, look at these guys. And you see them, belly chains, handcuffed, and they parade them. The IA will parade them, right? The agent will parade them through the airport. And you see these guys, and you're like, man, I worked with this guy. What happened? And I think it's important, and this is a lesson I learned. You have to have a good moral compass. You got to know right and wrong, that I'm not going to compromise that for any amount of money because I love my freedom too much. Because there's no way I wanted to do all that time in jail, right? So I start networking because when you're in customs, you're making seizures, not just drug seizures. You're making money.
Where were you assigned? Miami International Airport?
Yeah, Miami International. And I was part of the SET team. So we're making, and this is the mid-'90s, before the Mexican cartels take over. Before the Colombians collapse and the Mexicans take over, it's coming through the land border. It's coming through the airports. And because they like I say, they buy they have everybody. They access and network because the ramp workers, those guys, yeah, you see them get arrested all the time. That was common. Longshoremen get arrested all the time. But when I saw within the ranks, and being a young guy who really, see this, and I'm the first one in my family in law enforcement, that really, really opens your eyes. So I have a good network. I'm dealing with Secret Service, DEA, ATF, and that's when they start telling me about all these positions opening up. And I said, man, I would love, because at the airport, Vic, you have border authority, right? You can search, do anything you want. You want to search this one came from this one, you can do it, right? You don't need probable cause, right? You don't need a search warrant. It's unbelievable authority you have at the airport, right? And some other places where international cargo comes into, right? FTZs, foreign trade zones, et cetera. Not to get in the weeds on that, but other little places out there. So I want to take those cases beyond that, right? I don't want to be limited to that area. So I said, being an investigator, you can do a lot more of that. And you can start working and maybe do some other undercover work. So I put in for ATF, DEA, and ATF was the fastest that picked me up. And I was fortunate enough that I was picked to Tampa, which is, I went to school at St. Leo University, which is up in Pasco, right, in St. Leo. And I wasn't sent to the border. I wasn't sent somewhere where, Alaska or anything like that. I said, man, that's my old stomping ground. Life is good. Life is good there. That's when I started with ATF. And being an ATF agent, Vic, it's a different kind of work. Like I said, now you have to develop probable cause. Now you're making investigations. And undercover work is not for everybody. I was fortunate enough that I was in a group that did a lot of undercover work, right? And you had mentors. And one particular guy, we call him the Puerto Rican bullet catcher, right? He would become a guy I used to work a lot with. He was involved in the famous shooting in Hialeah back in '87, right? And he, believe it or not, after he retired, did a special on him. So you can look this up. He had a SIG 9mm. The bad guy had a SIG 9mm, which is a 6-hour. A 6-hour 9mm, a SIG 9mm. And they're arresting this guy, Hialeah, '87, at the mall. SWAT team is behind him. Here's the car. He approaches the front. The SWAT team is in the back here. When he approaches to come out, the guy opens fire at him, right? Boom. He takes his gun, right? He's out, and it plugs his barrel. It goes right in, like that. And he's trying to pull the trigger, doesn't know what's going on. Remember, his gun's right here. He takes it right there, right inside. He's a bullet catcher, like the Matrix. He caught the bullet right there. Fortunate enough, the SWAT team lights that guy up and takes care of that business there. 1 in a million, right? Because if it doesn't go in there, where's it going?
Oh,
on your face, man.
On your face.
I tell him that's his birthday, man. That's the day he was born again. That's no doubt about that.
So your first assignment with the ATF is the Tampa field office?
Yeah, Tampa field office. Yeah, I worked there for 12 years.
Were you so right out of the gate? Did they use you for undercover work, or were you just a field agent starting off?
No, I got to start off. I did about 2 years before I felt comfortable. Right, just get to know the job. You got to cut your teeth. Some basic cases, guns being recovered and bad guys, because now you embarrass yourself with the prosecutors. Man, this guy doesn't know what you want to go baby feet, because when you deal with prosecutors, a lot of these guys don't mess around. If you come in not knowing what you're doing, whatever, you get that reputation early, then forget it, man. You can't do cases. You have to go slowly, baby steps.
Could you explain to our listeners, as an ATF agent, you get assigned to the Tampa field office? Explain the type of cases you would catch and investigate before you went into an undercover role.
Yeah, you would get a lot of felons, right? Someone's a convicted felon in possession of a firearm. This would be a nice basic case to start off with. A guy who's maybe a career criminal, that's good. Looking at 15-year min-man, that's good there. And then you would take the case to the prosecutor. You would have to make sure everything's done right, because nothing's worse where the report doesn't match what really happened, right? So you got to talk to the officers. Say, hey, man, this the way it happened, what happened here? Go get everything it's on, and then you present the case if it merits to prosecution. So at least it gives you a chance to understand the system, which is important. Because as a customs official, right, it was very different. Then now I'm dealing with probable cause. I may have to get search warrants. I may have to now continue with the investigation. Maybe this guy cooperates. Maybe he wants to give me more information. So this just keeps on building and building, which is great. So starting off, I think that was a good way to start. And then you start developing a specialty, right? Some guys go to SWAT team. Hey, some guys, I thought about that. I was a good shooter. Some guys want to, do full-time SWAT team, hit doors all day, right? Some guys want to do undercover. Some guys just want to work arson investigations, do those kind of cases, explosives, what have you. So since the guys I worked with, especially my training officer, Carlos, I decided to start doing more undercover, and I realized different styles, and I developed my own style. Some guys like to talk too much. I like to listen a lot, talk enough, but the jury wants to listen to them talk, right? They want to hear all their criminal activities. They want to hear them bragging how bad they are, all the things they've done, right? That plays well in front of the jury. And I always try to have a lot of recordings, audio, video. I want to make sure it was like a movie, because I know that must be hard. I mean, being in a jury, to put someone away for a long time, you want to make sure the evidence is solid and they feel good about it. I want them to go home that they made a good decision, not iffy, nothing. That was just me. That was just me, because I put myself in that position, and I want to make sure I felt good when I went home. So I started doing undercover work, and
did they send you to? Does the ATF like have an undercover school, or did you have extensive training with that?
Yeah, it's a combination of a lot of things. ATF is a small agency, right? It's about agent wise, a little over 3,000, right? I think altogether over 5,000 with the inspectors, and they don't call them inspectors anymore, the IOIs and other admin people, about 5,000, right? Employees, FBI, it's enormous, right? DEA is enormous. So I have to wear many hats, right? I have to be the undercover, I have to be the investigator, right? I do my own property, I did my own workups, surveillance. You got to do it all, because we don't have. Hey, call the surveillance team. No, that's you. Thieves have that, right? But I don't have. Hey, call a team out there to do it. So it makes you get sharp pretty quickly and do it. And I also worked a lot with the locals. I developed a very good relationship with Pasco County Sheriff's Office. I worked with a gang unit, and we would end up taking down one of the most violent gangs in Pasco County on the west side, near Newport Richey, the Valentine Bloods. And that was a big case back when we took them down in 2009. The Sheriff White was out there. It was a big press conference at the time. He was a sheriff, and that was a big thing. So I worked a lot in Pasco. I went to school in Pasco out there. I even got married out there with my wife. I love that the Abbey out there, St. Leo Abbey out there. So I even had undercover apartments in Wesley Chapel, right? Had fully wired, right, where I meet people and stuff like that. So I had one particular case where I had wired this guy named Chino, Nestor Blanco, out there, and he was involved back in 1980 with a shootout with City of Miami Police Department. Absolute shootout. Him in a car, right? And it is the kind of bad apples you deal with. And he him and his partner. He's driving the car. It's a getaway shootout, and he pulls out the car. The other guy's opening up, and the officers, when they're chasing him, hit a bump, and I guess the door was ajar. I guess they're coming out, and both of them fell out of the vehicle, right? He positions the car in a certain way so his partner can kill them both, right? To shoot and kill him. He wounds them, but doesn't kill him. Another team comes in and arrests these guys a few minutes later. Very lucky. He got charged with two counts of attempted murder on Leos. He should, in my opinion, never got out. Now you fast forward to 2010, 2011. I have the exact dates in my book, 2010, 2011. And I've been dealing with this other character, small block, and I'm buying a lot of dope and guns, gang affiliated. He's been selling me, crack cocaine, some meth, and some guns. So he's looking at already like 7-10 years, but he has this other guy, and it's about Sunday night. So I'm saying he's calling me. So that's the one thing about undercover. No matter what time it is, I always have my phone and recorder. You've got to take those calls. Because you're taking calls Sunday night, they're saying, okay, there's no way anybody who's a Fed is going to take these. No, we have to do it. But so you live with your phone, undercover phone, and you live with all your stuff, because if you're all in, which I was, because I didn't look like this, and I didn't sound like this, by the way. I had long hair, I had the beard, my English was broken, I spoke with de Cuba, so I had a broken accent. I wanted to think I was in 10 years from Cuba, not somebody has a master's degree or working on it. And then say, nah, I'm not dealing with this guy, forget this guy. So it's a look you got to play. So the guy, small block, calls me, and he says, hey, I have this guy I'm working with. He wants to talk to you. And I said, okay. And I spoke to him a lot in Spanish, and he speaks to me in Spanish. And I could tell by his accent he's Cuban, right? And he says he has some hot guns, caliente. And I said, oh, really? And I said, what? He said, all different kinds of calibers. And he said, he calls it toys. Who get this? And I said, okay. And we're starting negotiating prices. And he says they're very hot. So I know they were stolen. So I negotiate a price, but of course I can't do a deal right then and there. You gotta get operational plans. You gotta buy time. So I buy a few days. I negotiate it. I set up the apartments right and go in there. And these guys meet me there. I would find out that these guns were later stolen from the sheriff's office veterinarian who work on the horses and canine, right, for the sheriff's office in Pasco County. So this guy hit his guns, stole his guns, and I was fortunate enough to be able to buy them in my undercover apartment. So they show up and in two different cars, and they have a dresser. And I asked them, hey, what's with it? They have their own dolly and everything. They put the dresser in. It looks real heavy. I said, what? It's in there? He goes, yeah, it's all in there. So they show me how they did it. The tops were sealed in. So if the cases were stopped, they were telling me, they couldn't open it. No one would think anything. There's all these stolen guns were in this dresser in the back of the pickup truck. I said, oh, okay. So they pop it up. They got the tools. They pop the tops off. And they start taking all these guns. And remember, the whole apartment's wired, right? We got video and audio. The cover team's there. And Nestor Blanco, I will find out before I met with him, because I started talking to the detective I work with, said, hey, what's this guy? He sounds Cuban. He's hanging out with Small Block, and his voice maybe in his 50s. And they said, all right, let me see here. I said, oh, this could be him. He's been affiliated with this before. And I looked at this picture. I said, okay, I remember this guy. But dude, this guy's a career criminal. Attempted murder, homicide on Leo's. We had this. You know, the guy's been a bad news his whole life.
Right.
And he should never have been out after that one. And I said, okay. And it was him. When I saw him, I said, okay, that's the same guy. When he come in, I said, that's him. And we started talking. And after he gave me all the guns, and I paid him whatever, $4,000, $2,000 each. And we're talking, because there were over like 20 guns and all makes and models in there. So the guy had a nice collection over there, the veterinarian, for the sheriff's office. And I had all these guns here. And then he said, okay, he put back the dolly, and we came back to talk some more. And I said, I wonder if he's going to talk about the shooting in Miami. Oh, yes, he did. Oh, yes, he was bragging about it. He was saying, yeah, they tried to shoot me and kill me in Miami. And he started telling me the story, how it went down. I said, okay, keep on talking. This makes for good evidence here about your character and background. And he hadn't changed. He's hardened. He's saying, listen, I heard you want AK-47. This is the tip of the iceberg. I like Pasco better than Tampa. Tampa is getting too crazy. I can do a lot of things here. And what they had a window company. So be careful, because they were going to the houses that they thought was empty, and people thinking they were working out there. Working van says window company, Date City, whatever it was called. And then they go in the back and get in there, steal everything, and load it up. So they knew that and this is before people had really security at home, right? Protected. This is an era where it was like, especially in Pasco County, sometimes people leave doors unlocked, windows open.
It's more country.
It was easy. They said they were stealing stuff left in jewelry. They cleaned this guy. They cleaned him out, man. They cleaned him out.
How did you meet these guys? Were you hanging around a bar, or was there a CI, a confidential informant introduction?
Well, I had to cooperate. This guy maybe before him, it was a CI.
Okay.
And with me, I was always very good. As once I was in with these guys, I would cut out the informant as quick as I could.
Right.
Because you never know what informers can do and say and what have you. So once I was in anywhere, and I always use informers. I had to come back and say, you know what, I'm not sure what happened. What do you call these guys? See what they're saying about me, and see what they're thinking, and just for intelligence reasons. So after the case was resolved, these guys were arrested a few months later. They end up Blanco ends up getting 30 years. 30 years. The guy who was involved in the shooting with the city of Miami. 30 years, and I think the other guy got about 7 or 8 years. And he had to do his state time first. So this was back then. So he had to do 10 years state and then 30. So he's never getting out. Death sentence. It's a death sentence, and that's rightfully so. After what he did, he should never be out again. That guy was just a piece of work. So I got a lot of satisfaction out of that case for sure.
How long did that case go on for?
The whole different parts of it, I would say it's over a year. That was about a year investigation with different players buying guns with this guy before I got to Blanco.
So you bought into a lot of them.
Yeah, we bought a lot of guns. Yeah, took a lot of guns off the street, which is good, and we recovered those guns, which I felt good because if not, there were some nice high-end weapons there, some nice rifles. So I'm glad that we were able to return those weapons to the sheriff's office, and then return it back to their vet.
How often, like nice. On a case like that, where you're buying guns off of bad guys, right? And obviously, you're buying them. They're going to the ATF. They're testing them. How often are these guns you find out are used in other crimes, like other homicides and shootings? Like, what's the percentage?
Percentage? Every so often you get a hit. I would say maybe at least 20%, right? All depends on the area. I think you get a little more if you are in let's say if you're in New York City, maybe in certain areas, right? or if you're in like Philadelphia, if I'm in Pasco County, less, I think, right, or in Tampa, but these still bad people, and they're still doing some really, really bad things. And, until I started working in that area, you didn't realize how much of gang problems there was in the Tampa Bay area. I mean, there are really a lot of different gang groups, from Bloods to Crips, Hispanic gangs, all different kinds of groups in there. And, one percenter groups. There's a lot of one percenter groups out there too. Outlaws, used to be king in Florida, right? And all of a sudden you have different groups, the pagans, and you have the Mongols now fighting to take over Florida. So you really have now an interesting little dynamic, which wasn't around when I was there. They were around they were supposed to be retired guys, Hells Angels retired, pagans retired, what have you. But now it seems like, end of Taco Bowman, the end of the hardcore outlaw era, is now you're seeing the Mongols and pagans and other groups. It looks like a strong play for Florida.
Could you explain how a biker gang operates?
It's like any organization. I mean, even though there's a national president, a lot of times it's regionally controlled, right? You got to pay your dues. They make a lot of money with their dues, so that's a big incentive for them. But something even among the biker culture, so I say, it's like the gangs. Even though they may be so-called a national president, sometimes they don't like each other. Yeah. And you see one chapter go after another chapter, and it's like there's bad blood there. So even though it's supposed to be under one roof, one brotherhood, you know what it comes down to, Vic, as you know? It's all about the Benjamins, right? It's all about the Benjamins, all about the money. These guys, and I've noticed, just like the mafia, if someone they don't like, I don't care if you're a brother or not, they get killed. They get killed, and that's they don't have any problems with that, and they do whatever they want, because if it feels like you crossed them in whatever way, they'll take care of you. And I think you see that in the mafia, you see the one percenter groups, and that's why I kind of enjoyed writing that book, The Most Dangerous Crime Syndicates of Our Time, because it's educational for me, because I'm researching all that, and I did a deep dive in the mafia, deep dive with the one percenters. I mean, it was interesting looking into Sonny Barger's life, right? The life of Sonny Barger, Full Throttle. I mean, he's a guy that became an international icon. He was pretty much the face of the counterculture movement, right? In the 60s and 70s, but he was tried for homicide for killing a drug courier, allegedly. But what came out, I thought was interesting in doing that trial, that he was acquitted. He's almost like Teflon Don of the biker world, if you think about Sonny Barger, how many close calls he had.
There was a story out that he was a cooperator.
Yeah. He allegedly, according to the sergeant that testified in his behalf from Oakland Police Department, that he had been working with him for years, right? He had been working for him for years, providing information and guns and explosives for left-wing organizations, Black Panthers, Underground Weather Group, and whatever group else that was a problem at the time, anti-war group, any anti-war group, because he served in the Army. He served underage in the Army, but he served. And then he left. And that caught people's attention there. It was like, oh, wow. But I think in that world, all these guys have to survive and test. And one thing I've noticed, let's say in the federal system, 90% of people who get arrested, they cooperate, right? The system is set up for that way.
Federal,
that way they get less time. If you keep your mouth shut, you're gonna get hammered, right?
It's not only that with the federal system. So, like, if you get arrested in the state of Florida, you're going to serve your time somewhere in Florida, so your family will get to see you. You get arrested in the federal system and you live in New York, they could send you to Lompoc or Big Sandy, or who's going to come see you in the middle of nowhere. So the feds really have you by the short hairs when it comes time to punish you.
They do, and that's, in my opinion, one of the other books I wrote is the fall of the mafia and the rise of the Mexican cartels, is racketeering charges, RICO cases, and all that leverage and hammer. The Omerta mentality went out the window, right? Everybody started cooperating. But why are the cartels so strong? Why are the cartels so strong? Because corruption in Mexico is so rampant. It's so rampant. They have very strict gun laws. People don't realize, but the cartels have everything they want. So it shows that gun control doesn't work, because when you have corruption, you buy people. It's either the carrot or the stick. They're going to buy you or they're going to kill you. And Vic, it's not going to be just you like the mafia. They have beef with you, it's going to be you. The cartels will kill the family first, in front of you, make an example, and then kill you and maybe other family members later. They're savage. It's absolutely brutal how they operate. And they don't even care about themselves. These guys kill themselves for power all the time. You know, there's no loyalty among these guys at all. A lot of these guys, like El Chapo, who's now sitting in the Supermax, right? They say El Mencho Cervantes, one of the biggest names, CJNG, Jalisco New Generation, out there in Guadalajara. These guys were semi-illiterate, right? They were selling avocados or oranges in the streets, but they got in the drug game. But what were they good at? You know, like Al Capone and all these guys? They said, you know, Bugsy Siegel, we were good at killing. And they had no remorse. And they said, oh man, I get respect for killing people? Well, guess what? I'm going to kill. When El Chapo was interviewed by Sean Penn after he escaped to the second or third time with Kate de Castillo in the mountains up there, he told Sean Penn that he himself, before he got killed like 2,000 people, he himself, not talking about giving orders. That's just me pulling the trigger and executing bodies. It means nothing. Life is cheap and means nothing to these people. So I feel those books are fascinating. That you know, it's one thing when you're living it, but when I became a research and author, and you can tell me the same thing, it's fascinating looking at these stories and talking and figuring out, man, and looking at the documentaries and the videos out there that you show these things and saying, man, there's some savages out there and they have no moral compass. No values.
Speaking of which, when you were doing your undercover work, did you have any close calls as far as them testing you, or something didn't look right that you had to pivot to get them off your back?
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I had one, and this was in Zephyr Hills. Again, it's about the same era, which is East Pasco, right? Just east of Wesley Chapel, near west of Dade City, and near 301. And when you deal with a lot of these trailers, sometimes you deal with Mexican groups and stuff like that. I had this one guy, which I was buying. He himself, he was a career criminal too, but he was more drug trafficking, high end kilos. He was a big kilo dealer. He was introducing me to his source for guns. These were, I think, Mexicans, and Zephyr Hills was a big pipeline at the time for meth from Mexico, a big pipeline in that area. So it was coming, a lot of methamphetamine was coming in. These guys had guns. First time meeting them and stuff. And I was supposed to buy an AK-47, a couple Glocks, about an ounce of meth, and all the stuff is in my book there. And so I was dealing with Paul, and they first wanted me to come inside, but when I was looking at the side of the trailer, and these are rundown trailers, right? You're in a shady, seedy area, right? I could see there were more people coming around the side, going inside, but they didn't know I could see that. And I'm telling him, no, you're supposed to have the stuff here ready. I got 5 minutes. I'm going to go. I don't want to meet anybody else.
Right.
Go get the stuff, and we're done. And he said, okay. You don't want to go inside? Fine. How about give me the money? No, I'm not doing that either. Right. I'm going to lose $4,000 or $5,000, and you're going to walk out the door and I'll have a bigger headache in my head.
It sounds like that's opening scene in Scarface where Tony is in the motel room. He's, in the car.
yeah, exactly. It's in the car. I said, no, I'm not going. I'm not doing that either. I said, I'm sitting in the car. You bring me the stuff. You got 5 minutes, or I'm leaving. 5 minutes later, a Hyundai Odyssey shows up. A guy with a polar shirt comes out. He gives me the AK-47 with a 75 round magazine that's full, just like that. And these guys are all dirtbags. Boom. Okay, I take a look at it. I like it. Paying for that. And then this other guy, Wiles, has his backpack. He had it on him. He takes out the 2 Glocks and an ounce of meth. And I said, pay him that. I said, what was this all about, man? Don't do that again. If you do that again, we're done. We're never doing business again. And that was it. But I think if I would have got in there, I probably been lights out for me, because it looked like there were a lot of guys in there. They knew I had money, and it would have been bad news for me. So you gotta be smart. It's like I treat my life. I'm not giving you money until I see product, like in anything, and I'm not going anywhere. I said I meet you in neutral locations. I'm not going to a dark little room somewhere, right, because that's going to be bad news for me. I said I took a risk coming here. You take a risk coming out there, and you come out there even. That's just as fair. And especially they know I have the green, and that way if there's a shootout, something happens, I got a better chance to survive and get out of there.
During your time with the ATF, did you rub elbows or with any famous criminals, either through debriefings or meeting up with them, in an undercover role?
Let me see. Famous. I had so many debriefings and proffer sessions, and
I know
a lot of these. A lot of these guys. Let me think about it. I know that doing these cases, I wouldn't say anybody that's. Some of these guys are hardened gang criminals, firearms traffickers. I mean, I know dealing with disappointing. Another case I had was people who are FFLs, federal firearms licensees. They have the public's trust to have a license, right, to do things right at these gun shops. And I had one case, and I had to work my way up to this guy, Bob Cash, right? Cash with all the cash. It's in my book there. And I had an intro by a guy who was a school teacher in high school. I had bought a lot of guns from him. He was dealing without a license, trafficking in firearms. And I got to him by a dirty FedEx employee who was running guns to Puerto Rico, right? So he was living in Tampa. He got popped in Puerto Rico for gun trafficking. He was a convicted felon, right? I got an intro to him, he was pending sentencing, convicted felon, pled guilty, and he's dealing guns with me. He's fine. So these guys don't learn their lessons, right? You're looking at time. I popped it. He ends up getting 3 or 4 years, but the case rolls. It keeps on going to different levels until I get to Bob Cash, right? So the teacher introduces me to him, and he's looking at time. He's a school teacher. He sells, teacher by day. He's a gun trafficker by night type thing. He's the type of guy that would go, hey, what do you need? I go to the gun show. I'll find it for you. Cash and carry. That's Florida. That's just the reality how it is. This other guy was an FFL near Tallahassee, Crestview, I believe. And he comes out, and my look and everything else, and I told him that all these guns that I buy from you, I'm going to send him. And he tells me he's an FFL. He says, you don't have to worry about these guns. I'm not putting them in my book. My book is his A&D book, acquisition disposition book. I'm going to keep it off paper. He tells me all this, and I'm recording everything else. And I said, man, this guy's a dirty piece of work.
Yeah.
He's an FFL and doing this stuff here. So I put the orders in. He gives me the guns. We do a few of them, and eventually we arrest him. But he has no criminal history, but at least he's out of business. And, public trust gives these guys to do it right, because he wasn't doing background checks on me. There's no accountability. And every time you see an FFL do stuff like this, it's a violation of public trust, and that's how bad people get the weapons like that. He got a couple years, but he had no criminal history. But at least he was put out of business, and that gave me a lot of satisfaction with that.
As an ATF agent, can you explain to the audience what a straw man purchase is?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. A straw purchase is when someone else is buying guns for like a third party, right? Most likely, a girlfriend or a friend. Let's say a girlfriend. A girlfriend goes in for a boyfriend who's a felon, right? And it kind of stands out because sometimes it's comical. Sometimes they'll be with them, right? It really is. I've done cases, I'm just undercover. I used to be, did both investigations, undercover, and everything. And you get the video from the FFL, and he has the money. He's pointing to her.
What do you want?
And she's filling out the paperwork. So it's almost comical with some of these people here. You can't do that. It says clearly on the ATF form 4473, firearms transaction form, are you the actual purchaser? That's at up to 10 years. Remember that, up to 10 years. You go, yes, I am. You better be. If you say no and you're buying the guns from other people, well, you're trafficking firearms and you're lying on the form. So that's a problem. So that's what a lot of times the cartels do. They recruit people who are residents, right, clean records, buy a lot of guns from different shops, and then ship them illegally down south, right? And that's one way. That was the old way. Now we're going to a new era of ghost guns, right? This has now changed how we do things now. Ghost guns, they manufacture them themselves, right? 3D printed weapons. Now you get the design, you just print it. You just pretty much just comes out in 3D, and it's untraceable. So they're cranking that out, or they have a good gunsmith and they order the parts and they assemble it. Untraceables. So it is becoming more and more challenging to deal with these groups, and they get the people to do so and knowledge. It's scary. And I did a few cases before I retired, before I went to headquarters, because at the end, I went from Tampa to Miami Field Division. I worked undercover, then I went to a firearms trafficking group. Then I saw these ghost guns, and there was one case. This is like the first time I really saw it firsthand. This is an unbelievable story here. It's Miami Beach Police Department. They call us. They had a recovery of all these firearm parts at a hotel room in Miami Beach, right on South Beach, right in the middle of South Beach, right. The maid goes in. These people forgot to put the sign "Do Not Disturb." It's always important to put your sign "Do Not Disturb," right? So when she goes in there, she sees all these gun parts laid out, right? Looks like their boxes are ready to be shipped out and everything. She freaks out. She tells her manager. They call the police. The police department, the locals don't know what's going on here. They seize it all, right? And they call us. So we start bringing these guys in for interviews, what's going on. I would dub this case the French Connection, Vic, the French Connection. The female in there was Mexican national. She was visiting on a visa passport, a tourist visa, and the guy from France was also visiting. He's French. He met her online, telephone meeting, and they had been ordering for months their guns on parts online to be sent to this hotel room. They meet in here to look like they're a couple, to package everything, send it back to France. They have a gunsmith out there in France. Yeah, right outside of Lyon, if I'm not mistaken. So they've been doing this. They got caught now. We send it to our contacts in Europol. They end up being a big case, and they take down a major organization that was using Florida parts or internet parts assembled here, shipped over there, right? And they were using it for gangs and cases, stuff like that. They were selling over there. So look at that international connection there, huh? Parts here, ordered, Mexican national, French, coming together, shipping back to France to be used for organized crime.
Thank goodness for that. The heads up by that maid.
She hit it right, man, and she did the right thing. She didn't just close the door and goes, "Oop, I think I
Right.
close this one."
How many times do you think that's happened where a maid has seen something going, I'm
Sure.
not getting involved in this?
They see maybe some kilos or something, or somebody
Or worse,
she's like,
a body.
"Yeah, oh, yeah." I imagine you've seen some horrible things too.
It's funny, we were talking about ATF cases. I'll just tell you a quick story. We locked up this kid one time. It's a long story. I might tell it on the podcast one day, but we locked up this kid with a gun, and he tried to escape, running the whole 9 yards. Recover the gun, send it off for the ballistics, and about a week later, we get a call from an ATF agent, which I found unusual because usually it would be the NYPD. Someone from our ballistics would call us. It was an ATF agent. Basically, the kid that we arrested with the gun, he was having a beef with this other guy, baby's mama drama, over some woman. He shot the guy in the ass, and he took off, and the guy didn't press charges. So they pulled the bullet out of his ass, right? And that goes to the lab. The guy that he shot wants to get a gun and settle this in street court, but before he can get his hands on a gun, the kid that we arrest gets him a second time and shoots him in the head. So the gun the kid, it was two bullets from the same gun, put one in his ass, and a week later put one in his head. The ATF actually called us up with that they had traced it. And then they were working how and where we got the firearm from.
Obviously, I'm popular. And
What do you enjoy more, catching bad guys or writing books?
always putting bad guys in jail. Man, that's so gratifying. But I do enjoy this too. But you know what I enjoy too? Talking to people like you, Vic, doing the shows, podcasts, and now I'm also doing screenplays. So I've been writing screenplays based on my book ATF Undercover. I got final draft. Someone recommended it. It's great software. It does all the formatting for you. So if that's something you're thinking about, I recommend it. It's good. I think I paid less than $100, about 100 something for it, and it's great. It helps. I talk to producers. I shout out to my PR firm for helping me out, Transmedia Group. So they've done a great job for me. I can't complain, and me and a lot of people, and hopefully we can make it into a TV series. I'm trying to work to make ATF Undercover into a TV series. Right now, I've named it Broken Crowns, based on, but I'm taking creative licensing to make it more dramatic and more exciting.
Ignacio, what's the name of your latest book, and where can our listeners find all your books?
Oh, on Amazon. I'm exclusively on Amazon. Ignacio Esteban, Amazon.
Where can our listeners get a hold of you on social media to do other
Facebook.
podcast interviews? And
Yeah, on Facebook, Ignacio Esteban, LinkedIn. You can get a hold of me also on LinkedIn also. Facebook is very easy. Goodreads if you want to. You can reach me on Goodreads. Remember Goodreads. Those are the big three. But most people reach me on Facebook and LinkedIn. That's how they find me and stuff. And and if you want to give me another podcast, or anybody's watching or has any ideas, I'd be more happy to go out. I have a lot of stories to tell. Like I said, I can do a lot of different things, from politics to true crime to my personal life to current events. And I do a weekly show. If you want to follow us on YouTube with William Steele, True Crime, check it out. It's a cool show. It's very popular on Rumble because we also do a lot of politics. And Rumble, they're not as sensitive as YouTube. Let me just say that.
Ignacio Esteban, thank you very much for being on the show. And be sure to check out his book, ATF Undercover and the Most Dangerous Crime Syndicates of Our Time. Go to his Amazon author page, Ignacio Esteban, and check out his books. And I want to thank everyone, as always, for tuning in, especially my friends in Phoenix, Arizona, Indianapolis, Indiana, Wilson, North Carolina, Sewell, New Jersey, and North Stoningham, Connecticut. If you work in law enforcement or have an interesting criminal background and would like to be a guest on the show, please drop me a note on Twitter or Instagram at VicFerrari50. And if you enjoyed the content, check out my Amazon author page. Type in my name, Vic, Ferrari like the car, where you can preview all my books for free, including NYPD, Law and Disorder. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll have another episode up next week.
Thanks, Vic.